Everybody's got words that give them the ick. For some, that may be the word moist, squelch, secrete, an honest day's work. For fans of anime, funnily enough, we all share a trigger word that rattles us to our core. CGI. No. Good old CGI. In the professional field, hand-drawing large, complex figures in motion are an animator's nightmare fuel. In this case, the ability to model a 3D figure and rig it to simulate motion is much preferred when compared to hand animating that same scene. Yet, while managing costs and maintaining a standard of dynamic animation should just be an outright positive, that in no way aligns with the public's perception of said tool. Long associated with budget cutting and skipping corners, the fact that a lot of attempts at 3D animation in the past just didn't really pan out has only served to amplify these feelings. Until in 2017, when the Messiah arrived. While there were others before it, Hoseki no Kuni really felt like a turning point for the industry. It managed to show that not only can 3D animation compete with its 2D anime counterparts, in some instances it even has its advantages. It was one of the first times people really thought, okay, we have the technology, and now with the release of both Beastars and the new Trigun by the same studio, Orange, we're at a point where it doesn't feel blasphemous to mention the accursed 3-letter acronym. So without further ado, let's talk about one of my favorite CG... Okay, maybe we still shouldn't say it. Let's talk about Dorohedoro. Released in 2020, the story of Dorohedoro revolves around our reputable main reptile, Kaiman, and his journey to reveal what went down the day that he A. lost his memories, B. had his head replaced with a lizard's, and C. had an unknown person take refuge in said lizard head. This is a world riddled with mystery, inequality, extreme violence, and magic. So basically a mashup of Mad Max, Mortal Kombat, and Harry Potter. I feel pretty good about that comparison. All of this takes place in one of the most ungorgeously gorgeous settings I've ever seen. Immediate respect is owed to Kimura Shinji, who happens to be responsible for much of the background art. A living legend, he's worked on productions such as Angel's Egg, Kekkai Sensen, and Akira. His ability to illustrate extremely dense cityscapes while maintaining the highest level of detail and visual storytelling has been a major boon for every production that he's touched. Whether it's the gothic architecture of the Sorcerer's World or the dank undercity that is Whole, these 2D backgrounds are seamlessly incorporated with the 3D models to achieve an aesthetic that's unlike many of its contemporaries. It's brown, dark, dirty, filled with smog and mutant-looking creatures, and yet it is exceedingly appealing to the naked eye. Everything, whether it's the brutality exhibited by its residents or even the magic system, lends itself to this rough aesthetic. At least for me, when the word magic is brought up in conversation, my mind immediately wanders to sparkles, rainbows, and the crappy basketball team in Orlando. All that magic does in Dorohedoro is destroy, disconfigure, and ruin, both matching and playing into the grungy atmosphere. Grungy. What a fun word, grungy. Now, it isn't something you'd want your daughter being called, but still. If I had to compare it to a piece of Japanese animation, I might go with something like Devilman Crybaby. They're both super explicit, violent, with these crazy, almost epileptic sequences. But while Devilman leans into the more nihilistic, hopeless stuff, Dorohedoro's dark setting and nature seem to counteract the comedic, absurd nature of its story. While I can't in good faith recommend Dorohedoro to those who are squeamish when it comes to the over-the-top violence, it's both so over-the-top and treated as if it's the norm that it gives off a whole different vibe. Again, it's kind of like Mortal Kombat, where the elaborate fatalities are so out there that it goes full circle from, oh dear god, that's enough of that for today, all the way back around into comedic territory. Episode 2, some guy gets his eyeball kicked out of his head, his friend steps on it, and the guy's like, oh man, you stepped on my eyeball. Slicing the dude's head off, catching his brain in a hat for no specific reason. Where are you going with your funeral shoes as he's wearing his black Air Force Ones? It is just a constant barrage of the incomprehensible, a world where weird is the norm, but treated as if it's another day in the office. The show is bizarre, and it is so good. I mean, they've even got Doom 64 references. The opening animation resembles everything I imagined taking shrooms would be like. pairing quite nicely with what the story has to offer. Everything starts with Kaiman. He's got a lizard head, is immune to magic, the main source of power in this world, and again has a dude inside of his mouth. But the story doesn't focus solely on him. We constantly swap between a large swath of characters, some of which are portrayed as protagonists, some as antagonists, but considering you spend just as much time with each of them, learning that they are all as quirky and messed up in the head as each other, the line between good and bad is very much blurred. You know what Cranky Kong would always say? If everybody's moral compass is questionable, then nobody's is. Because of this narrative structure, however, we get to see each character's backstory, motivations, and most importantly, their past experiences, which in many cases lend hints or clues to not only what happened with Kaiman, but a seemingly greater conspiracy that looms in the shadows. Frankly, Season 1 didn't manage to offer much payoff in this area, and is something that I greatly look forward to with Season 2. Just needs more time in the oven. Dorohedoro is a very ambitious project. Not only was the source material way out there, but the self-imposed challenge of weaving both 2D and 3D CGI in a time where, quite frankly, there was a pretty heavy stigma associated with it, meant that the crew really had an uphill battle ahead of them. Yet despite all of the challenges they faced, I think they knocked it out of the park. Looking at the production as a whole, the tone and atmosphere of Dorohedoro is incomparable. The comedy, the brutality, this yin and yang paired with the absolute absurdity of it leans into somewhat of a fever dream, and again, it is so much fun. Because of this, I think that Dorohedoro can hold its head high. As I've mentioned before, I really do value a production's willingness to step outside of their comfort zone and create something unique. They may not always work out in the end, but that doesn't mean the effort was a waste. Not only did Dorohedoro push the agenda, but it really did turn out wonderful. Maybe it's because this world is already so foreign and bizarre, but the CGI doesn't stick out nearly as much as you'd think. Instead, it just adds to the wonderful absurdity that is Dorohedoro.